Hi, I'm Marissa, founder of Within Your Reach.
And I'm Mara, founder of The Redefiners. We are coming here today to talk to you about a movement that we are very excited to start.
1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men will be assaulted in their lifetime. That number is probably much higher considering only 5% of cases are reported. Sexual assault and rape are horrendous, traumatizing events, and it happens all too often to be so rarely talked about. Victims can be societally trained to believe it's their fault, but that's the thing, it never is. So now it's our time to step up and speak out. Instead of dividing in silence, let's come together with a voice. We will be heard and not overlooked.
Through the startup process of our own nonprofits, we quickly realized that men and women alike are continuing to struggle with opening up about their sexual assaults due to a continuing societal stigma. But through our own personal experiences, we have come to the realization that by opening up and confronting our pasts, we have only gained personal power in moving forward with our lives.
Through ImAStatistic, our goal is to interview men and women who have broken the silence and gained control over their assaults and their lives. We want to show how life-changing and empowering this can be through others who have found their strength in their story.
We already have over 20 men and women who are excited to share their stories about overcoming their past and how it has positively affected their future, ranging from creating organizations like ours, writing books, and advocating for their passions. These warriors use their pasts to fuel their futures.
We are so excited to introduce this strength to our community and hopefully inspire others to start taking control.
Please visit us on our Facebook, #ImAStatistic. This is where we will be releasing all of these interviews, as well as our website, www.imastatistic.org.
For more information on our nonprofit organizations, please see the links posted below on your screen.
We look forward to seeing your comments, and if you wish to stay anonymous to the group, please PM us on our Facebook, #ImAStatistic, and Marissa or myself can speak with you directly. Okay.
Awesome.
Today, we are lucky enough to interview Miss Allie. Allie is a junior at Seton Hall University studying social and behavioral sciences with a minor in social work. Her ultimate goal is to become an SARN nurse, which stands for Sexual Assault Response Nurse, and work with young women who have been affected by similar traumas. She is obsessed with tigers and Dunkin' Donuts, and her favorite thing to do is listen to Beyonce in her car and sing at the top of her lungs, even though she thinks she's an awful singer. The verdict is out. So, Allie, first of all, we want to thank you for coming today and doing this interview. Right before we started, you had said something that was very motivating about why you're doing this. Your 2-year anniversary is coming up, and you're just filling your time with anything and everything to get out and about this. So I would just like to introduce you to tell your story and a little bit about what happened and your process of recovery afterwards.
So it was my freshman year going into college. I was going to big school, and I never left my little town bubble of small town beach town, New Jersey. So my mom, I remember the last night I went out for college, she was like, be careful of men, don't go to parties, leave your cup out because men are wolves. And I was like, okay, Mom, I took her advice, and my stepdad grilled it on me because I have 2 older stepsisters, and they definitely grilled it on me a little bit more, and they were just very concerned, and they just wanted to let me know be careful because they had siblings or friends that it had happened. Right, I went to Ramapo, so I started college at Ramapo College for nursing, and I noticed that when I started, within the first week, we got several alerts. They would send out emails basically saying there was a sexual assault in this dorm room at this time. I remember this guy hit me up on Facebook, and I was like, okay, and he added me, so I asked him naturally, who the hell are you, blatantly? And he was like, oh, I go to Ramapo, I've seen you around campus, and I think you're really cute. And he was cute. I'm not gonna lie. He was really cute. And so I flirted with him back a little bit, and I was like, oh, we should hang out. Okay, me and my friend V and my other friend A. And they both, we were all hanging out just in my room smoking. And every time he went to pack the bong, the makeshift broke college chip bong that he made out of a Gatorade bottle, he would turn his back so we wouldn't be able to see what was going on. And that was my first sign that something sketchy was going on. My friends, I remember an hour in, they started getting really sick, and they were throwing up in my bathroom, and they were they live next door to me in the suite next to me, so they're we're gonna go home. I'm like, okay. go home. But we were sitting on my bed, and I told him, like, listen, like, I'm stoned. I don't want to hook up. This is, like, the thing. And, like, then he starts kissing me, and naturally, like, I'm just completely I'm out of it at that point. Like, I'm starting to get really, like, high and dizzy, and I'd been high before, and it wasn't normal, I remember. So I was like, this is weird. And then I remember I kept telling him to stop, and he just kept forcing himself on me. And then it got to the point where, like, I remember I was like, okay, I'm just going to lay down because I cannot keep my head up and keep my body up right now, like, on top of my bed. So I laid down, and I remember we were just laying down. He put on this, like, really trippy music to the point where I felt like I was, like, being hypnotized. It was weird. But I turned off my light. I remember I changed into my PJs, and I remember distinctly that my PJs matched because, like, at that time I was like, oh my God, they match. Like, this never happens. And that was, like, my one moment where I, like, felt like myself. And I just hung on to that. But then the lights were off, we were laying, and he kept trying to, like, force himself on me. So I would get up periodically to text my one friend, V, and I would basically be like, listen, like, I don't know what's going on. She's like, do you want me to come? And I'm like, no, I think I got this. And then I texted her. I kept, like, getting up. It felt like every 2 minutes. It was actually every, like, 15 minutes. And I kept getting up to say, like, hey, listen, I don't know what's going on. And then I remember the last ditch text I sent to her was, hey, this is just proof that I said no. This is proof that I did not want this to happen, that I told him I don't want this to happen. If anything happens, I told her, like, I can't control myself right now. Like, I don't know what's going on. I can't feel my body. And I believe at that point she was, like, asleep. So I know she wouldn't get that text the next morning. And then I don't really remember, like, what happened after that. I basically had, issues with my father before. So, like, he was not the best person, like, kind of abusive towards me. So I remember at one point I was screaming, Dad, stop, and I remember Mike saying, yes, say that again, and, like, kept forcing himself on me. Yeah, it was fucked up. And then I remember periodically, like, I felt like I was in 3 dimensions. I felt like I was in my head saying, what the hell is going on? I felt like I was flashing in between the moment and saying, what's going on? Like, who is this guy? And then flashing between the trauma that happened with my dad and saying, stop, Dad. And I saw my dad's face. So it was like I was in 3 different worlds. And then I remember I took a Snapchat apparently that night, and I said, like, of him in the background, said, I don't want this to happen, with, like, I put, like, a pill, a hammer. On my mind, I was like, what are the worst emojis I can think of right now? And so those were the worst emojis. And I remember then it was like 5 a.m. I checked my phone briefly, and because he got out of my bed, I remember I saw him put on his pants, and I, like, just passed out because my brain was just like, no bueno. And I remember I woke up at, like, 12 because I had me and V were going to go get lunch. And I kind of was like, I think something happened last night. So luckily that day I had therapy with the school, and I told my therapist, and they recommended, like, go get your sheets, go to the hospital. And that was when, like, the shit started with, like, the school and everything, like, the administration, because I went to the school, I had to beg this SAR nurse to come because she didn't think that there was any evidence, that there was any proof that anything had happened because I had been high. And I had to beg her. But luckily we had this advocate that came in from Healing Space of Bergen County, and she sat with me and she helped me kind of, like, argue with this woman saying, please come. So the woman did come, I got an examination, and then the prosecutor came and gave me her card. So I was like, I had an appointment to meet with the prosecutor the next day. My friend A drove me, and I remember I went to the prosecutor's office. I was like, okay, I'm going to be cool, calm, collected about this whole thing. And the prosecutor, I sat down, I told them every detail, down to the fact that my PJs matched, because that was, like, what I remembered. They took me out for 10 minutes. They were like, okay, let's go. We're going to talk about this. And then I went back in with the woman from Healing Space, and they basically said, there's no case. It sounds like you have a lot of issues with your father. It sounds like you've been promiscuous before, because I mentioned that, like, I had been in situations, like, you know, like, I had hooked up with a couple people, and, like, I knew what consent was. And they basically were like, you have a lot of issues, and we can't give you a case right now because, honestly, we think it was your fault, basically, they said. And I remember I was like, okay, can I leave? And they were trying to talk to me about how I should go get counseling because clearly I have some issues. And I remember I was just like, okay, to the point where I walked out of the room. And I walked out, I walked straight ahead, I remember, to get out of the building. And the second I got out of the police department's office, my friend said I let out, like, the most blood-curdling scream ever, because I felt like my life was over at that point. Like, I just felt destroyed. And so I was like, okay, you know, I had a mental breakdown, but I was like, okay, I'm going to go to the school, because maybe if I go to the school and tell them this and say, like, I went to the prosecutor's office, then maybe they'll say, okay, well, you know, maybe somehow if the school does something, the prosecutor will, you know, because they had my stuff on file, they had my blood, they had everything. So I went to the school, and I had to write a statement, and so did A and B. And basically they wrote a statement and I freaked out because it was just tough. But I remember it took some time. So the prosecutor didn't do anything. The school didn't really do anything. I would email them periodically, and especially our Title IX coordinator. I would email her once a month saying what's going on because I want something to stop. Like, I want something to happen. And I remember she basically was like, okay, something's gonna happen, but we don't know right now. But at that time they offered me no protection. I didn't know you could get a no contact order from someone. And so I would like go into the cafeteria and he would sit there and stare at me. I remember there's like an arch to get through to the freshman dorms to the senior dorms. And I remember I'd have to go through that arch to see him, and he would like sit outside, smoke a cigarette, and stare me down. So I was like on my way to class, everything, I would see him in the hallway, and I would jump. And I just was like, not okay. Somehow, miraculously, I got good grades. But I just remember one night, it was like December, or it was like March or something, and I remember, because this continued for 8 months. Like, I did not hear anything from the school. They didn't do anything about it for 8 months. And I remember one night I was drunk and I was at a party, or I had just come from a party or out with my friends, and I saw him with a gaggle of his friends and they were staring at me. I was like, can you stop fucking staring at me? And then he went and reported that, saying that I was harassing him. And I remember I got so mad. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, this isn't even a thing right now. And so I went for a hearing with the school where I basically had to sit and face him. And there was like 3 students, 2 administrators. He was there. He brought a lawyer, which I remember. And I just brought like a friend. And I remember like, it's so sketchy that he brought a lawyer. I sat down. I told them what happened. I faced him. I remember looking him in the eye and going, like, had to take a break because I remember I had to throw up in the bathroom because I was just so like overwhelmed. I went, and then 2 weeks later I found out from the school that he had only been charged with marijuana and he wasn't allowed to live on campus, that he had gotten away with it, and basically he wasn't allowed to live on campus until I graduated, but basically he was off the hook and he had to go to drug counseling. I remember how furious I was. I was like literally the angriest person alive because I just could not. And then I remember he tried to appeal it. So eventually he wrote a letter to the school saying, hey, I don't think this is fair. And the school was like, well, F you. Like, basically they're like, whatever happened, like, they're like, you're in trouble for marijuana. But I remember I talked to them and I was like, why did they get him? Like, this makes me feel awful. And they were like, because he didn't do anything, because it was your fault, basically, they said. And so naturally my mental health started to deteriorate. And I remember it was like the night before my birthday, or like the week of my birthday, and it was finals week, so I was stressed. And me and my boyfriend, we dated during the 8 months, but then we broke up just because I was going through such a rough time and I didn't want to drag him into it. And I remember one night he came over to get his stuff, and him and I got in a screaming match, where the point where like I had a flashback and I was sitting in front of my door begging for the world to stop. And my ex, he didn't know what to do, so he called public safety. And I remember my ex, like, he came at me and I like went like that. And he like mentioned to him like she was having a flashback, and she swiped at me. And public safety then again told me, like, he picked me up in the morning, escorted me to their office, and basically made me write a statement and said, you can't live on campus, you're being placed on involuntary suspension. And my mom, I remember when she came to pick me up, was furious because she was like, why didn't they do that with that guy? And I was like depressed, and a lot of my friends knew I was depressed, but they also knew it was a reaction from everything that had happened.
When did you get to a point of knowing your right from wrong and saying, like, essentially, fuck everybody else that doesn't believe me, I'm gonna move forward with my story because it's my truth?
I sometimes still blame myself, and I still, like, I was talking to my mom actually because she came to visit me in school, and my mom and I were talking in the car, and I was like, I still blame myself for a lot of it happening, and I still question everything because I feel like I don't remember it, so then it must have not had happened. But I know it did because I had friends that were there. I still have the Snapchat saved on my phone. It's disgusting because I look at it, because I have it screenshotted, and I look at it to reality check myself to say, okay, you're not crazy, this happened, it got to the point where it was happening, people, after it happened to me, people were coming to me because I was pretty open about it because I was just pissed, and I'd see him and I'd be like, oh, that's the guy who did this to me. And one of the things that they did at Rampo was Out of the Darkness Walk, which I got really involved in, and basically it was like a fuck you almost to everyone on campus, and so you like scream, and I think that's when a lot of people found out that it happened, because I went and I spoke in front of my sorority sisters too. Like, a lot of them came because there was like a moment before where like it was like a time where everyone spoke that it happened to them. And a lot of people rallied behind me, and I think that's when I realized that it's going to keep happening until I do something. And I feel like if I don't do something, and if I don't continue to like be an advocate, then I'm part of the problem.
Right. what strengths do you get from that? Like after that speech, where are you internally, you know?
I feel like it's less of my fault. Like that's the big thing. I feel like it's like the more I talk about it, and then also the sad and cool thing is when I did transfer here, there was a girl in my sorority who I met, and it turns out the same day, the same year, the same kind of situation it had happened to her.
Wow.
And it's so like her and I are really, really close, but it happened to her the same day. Like same day, 2 years ago, October 20th, 2015, it happened to her. So I think that knowing that like also I'm doing it for her. I don't know. My little sister's going to college. So she, she's going to a big school, and she tells her friends what happened, because me and my sister don't have the best relationship. But one thing that we do have is I've been through a lot of stuff, and I always tell her, like, you can tell your friends, because I don't want them to like ever feel like they, can't handle things. And she's going into a big school now, and my little baby sister's growing up, and God forbid it happens to her, I'm literally going to punch someone. But aside from that, I just want my little sister to know, and like my friends to know, and my sorority little to know that like, you have someone that's willing to kick ass and embarrass herself for you. You know what I mean? I'm willing to talk about it and be that person for you, because I've been in position, because I felt like I couldn't after, especially when I put stuff.
Yeah. What is your biggest piece of advice to someone that is clearly bothered and can't move forward?
I think that by talking about it, because you never know who has been through it and who's like, like I found that like one girl that came crying to me, and she was depressed and like thinking about ending her life, I remember. And she said that the minute I talked about it, that all changed for her, because she realized, she saw me like trying to live my best life in the face of college. I feel like college is like the worst time. I feel like college is just like the toughest time, because you're going out to parties and you're living your life, and you're trying not to like, your parents tell you like don't leave your cup unattended, but you're trying to have a social life and live your best life. But at the same time, you shouldn't have to be on your toes all the time, and that's like a sad thing, is you shouldn't have to walk home from a frat party and like you shouldn't have to be afraid of what's going to happen next.
Outside of speaking about it, a big part of what we're trying to advocate for also, are other things that help move past, like what have you gotten involved with, started that maybe you didn't, start originally, that's helping you move forward personally.
And then the first thing I did was I wrote an Odyssey article about it, which I'll send you guys the link if you want to put it under. But I wrote an Odyssey article about it, and I wrote, "Cheer the guy who sexually assaulted me," and that was the first thing I did. This isn't the defining moment of my life. Life's moments are defined by the moments that, make you want to like cry and stuff. It's defined by the moments that you take those moments and turn them into something positive. Do something about it. Be an advocate. Tell your friend. Even like just write about it. Do something. Like a page on Facebook. Watch YouTube videos. Do something, because it'll do more for you than you think you realize. Yeah, I think it's like an owning it thing. It's definitely like a saying like, like this is something that's happened to me. And as much as like I say like this isn't going to be the thing that defines me, but it is the thing that happened to me, and it's just something that I want to continue my life's work with. So maybe it does define me a little bit, because I want to, do my own kind of jam with it. I want to be a sexual assault response nurse, and I want to work in nonprofit, and I want to make this my life's work to make sure that people, women and men, and anyone who it's ever happened if it doesn't happen, great. But if it does happen, you can, either way, you can still do something about it. And I think that's the most powerful thing, is when advocates and when survivors and advocates come together to